Welcome to the Having It All podcast, the show about what it takes to live an abundant, loving life. My name is Matthew Bivens, and each week I'm helping you get out of your head so that you can truly have it all. Let's do it. Welcome to the Having It All podcast. My name is Matthew Bivens, and I'm excited that you're here with me on this Saturday. You know, it's a cold and rainy Saturday here in Atlanta. That's what winters are like sometimes. They're just cold and rainy. But here in the studio, it's a different story. It's warm, it's toasty, it's comfortable, and the energy is high. So I'm ready. I'm ready to bring it today because today's conversation is a personal one. And I'll just say right now, there's going to be some cursing in this one. There just is. So yeah, know that. But today's episode, it's personal, and it was inspired by life. It was inspired by recent life. I received some honest feedback about how I had been showing up in my life. And that feedback led to some introspection. That introspection led to, quite frankly, me kicking the shit out of myself and my ego getting totally trampled on. And yeah, so this one's going to be a personal one. And I guarantee that the takeaways in this episode are change your life worthy. Transformational takeaways, absolutely, for every single person listening. And so I'm excited to get into that conversation. But first, we got to do some magic. We got to talk about how we're influencing self, others, and life in an empowering way. Because you're doing it all the time. You're doing it every single day. And I want you to become more and more aware of the magical moments that you're creating. I want you to become aware of those magical moments, and I want you to become aware of the fact that you are a creator of magic. You've got that power. So, a few episodes ago, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 episodes ago, I talked about receiving feedback from some loved ones about me not showing up to a run that I do on Saturdays. So I didn't show up for the run, and I got some feedback around that. Let's just say that. And so my magic today is that this Saturday, this morning, I showed up. I got my butt out there, and it was cold as hell, raining, and didn't matter because I received that feedback. I took it to heart, and I showed up. So I was out there, and I brought Maya. Maya showed up too. We had the little jogging stroller, had a little plastic cover over it. She was all bundled up, double, triple layer of clothes and hats and gloves, and she was loving it. She actually hummed and sang for the entire run. It was great. But, influencing myself to show up was big for me. It really was, because it actually ties into the conversation today, because I'm talking about agreements today. And so, I kept my agreement, and that's huge. So big. And the run itself was powerful. I really connected with that beast mode part of me. A lot of times when I'm referring to beast mode, I'm talking about in the bedroom. I'm talking about how I show up intimately. But beast mode in this case was showing up physically for myself and really locking in, really dialing in and pushing my body. I was running with my life coach, mentor, trainer, and it was just he and I, and we were going 4 miles, and pouring rain. I'm pushing a baby. We're on the city streets, so it's potholes and construction and sidewalks, and we cranked out 4 miles in 32 minutes. We were hustling, we were moving, and I remember just getting into that gear where I was sending myself love. I was reciting mantras. I was saying I'm a machine, I'm a beast, and I was just going. And 32 minutes later, I'm like, dang. We covered some ground today. It was crazy. So that's my magic, influencing myself to get out there in the elements because it didn't matter, right? I create the weather. I create the weather within me. It's not the weather out there. It doesn't even matter. It's just circumstance. But showing up regardless. And not only showing up, because that's typically half the battle, but when I was out there, just busting my ass and giving it everything and just putting it all out there and feeling great. And what was a double magic, sub magic, is that Maya got to experience her daddy showing up powerfully. Because that was one of the big things I recognized last week when I decided to stay home because it was cold and rainy. Maya watched me stay home because it was cold and rainy. And she knows that Saturday morning, that's where we go. She's probably thinking, what's going on, Daddy? Why aren't we going? It's because Daddy was punking out. But not this week. So that's my magic. I encourage you to take a minute to reflect for yourself. What is some magic in your life? How have you influenced self, others, and life in an empowering way recently? Connect with that and recognize that that's what having it all is. Having it all is creating those magical moments constantly seeing your life as a series of magical moments. The things that you love, that are great, and the moments that suck. There's magic in those moments too. Because you created it, and you created it for a reason, and it's showing up for a reason. So if you're going through some stuff right now, if you're feeling like life is just kicking your ass, well, guess what? There's magic in that. And if you can see the magic in that, then you win. You win. Because then there's nothing that can be taken away from you. There's no reason to hang your head. If you see the magical moments in all the stuff, whether or not, you're on the verge of bankruptcy, whether or not you're losing your job, whether or not your relationship is going down, if you can see the magical moment in that and connect with, wow, I've created this. I have a hand in this. And so I've had the power to make something look the way that I didn't want. So that means I have the power to make it look the way that I do want. If you can connect with that, then sky's the limit for you. It truly is. So take a moment, connect with whatever magic has been showing up in your life recently, and then continue on with the episode. I want to share a little listener love now. I've always got so much gratitude for you all listening to the podcast, tuning in, reaching out to me, connecting, all that stuff. It's been tremendous the past several weeks. Just the outpouring from you all and just taking time to read everyone's messages and reach out. And if you haven't heard from me yet, I'm going to reach out back to you. Just be patient. Do it. Because I read every single thing that you all send to me and I respond to everything. So today I want to just give a shout out to Rebecca. Rebecca emailed me and was inspired by the conversation around the 5 love languages. And so, Rebecca, I think it's super cool that you're applying those love languages in the new relationship. That's beautiful. That's a powerful way to kick off a relationship, people. Do like what Rebecca's doing. When you're getting into a new relationship, go and have a conversation around the 5 love languages. Read the book together. Go take the quiz together. Learn your love language and learn your partner's love language. You do that at the beginning of the relationship, you're setting yourself up for something powerful. You're setting a powerful foundation. And listen, if you're just in a relationship at all and you haven't checked out 5 love languages, then I really want you to wisen up and give it a read. I've said this before. That book, it's like having the cheat codes to your relationship. It truly, truly is. Because when you read the book and when you take the quiz is free, by the way. I'm not sending you towards something you got to pay for. The quiz is free. I think it's 5lovelanguages.com. You can Google it. But you take a little quiz, you answer some questions, and it tells you what your love languages are. And then you take that information and you figure out some very specific actions that you or your partner can do to speak those love languages. Those are cheat codes to your relationship. It's like I know exactly what Sarah wants me to do to love on her in the way that she receives it. I spent so many years trying to figure that out and failing at it in previous relationships. So whether you're like Rebecca and you're doing it at the beginning, or you're like me and you're doing it years into it, go check out that book. Be wise, be proactive, and go create some magic in your relationship. So, Rebecca, again, I'm happy that the episode spoke to you and that you are doing that in the relationship. That's super cool. And thank you for reaching out to me, Rebecca. I appreciate it. If anyone wants to be like Rebecca and jump into a conversation with me, then you can do so. You can hit me up. I like Instagram these days. So Matthew_Bivens at Instagram. Go check it out. And if you want to listen to the episode that Rebecca was inspired by, it's called How to Totally Level Up Your Relationship Using the 5 Love Languages. I give you some really concrete action items on how you can apply the love languages in your life. And again, you get those cheat codes. And man, when I was a kid and I used to play like Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo, I would walk around with a sheet of cheat codes for games. And that was like holy grail. Like I prize those cheat codes, So now I do that with the love languages. I have it on my phone. so I know how to speak Sarah's love languages at any time. All right. Before we jump into the episode, I just want to, make a request. I don't know. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, then I would love for you to do so, especially on iTunes. iTunes is right now the premier place for podcasts to be discovered, for people to find the show and check out new stuff. And iTunes really likes when people subscribe. So if you haven't subscribed, please do, especially if you've listened to an episode or 2 or 10 and you've gotten something from it. If something I've said has inspired you, or you've taken action, or something has helped you, then that'd be super cool for you to just jump on to iTunes or Apple Podcasts. I think it's called Apple Podcasts now. And subscribe. That'd be dope. All right. Let's get into this conversation. We're talking about agreements today. And like I said at the very top, this was inspired by my life. A lot of episodes are inspired by my life, but this one, every once in a while, like, life smacks you in the head. Life just smacks you in the head. And that happened to me this week, to the point where I had to pull over my car. I had to compose myself. I felt like a dog with its tail between its legs. And that doesn't happen very often for me. And when it does, I pay attention, because that means that there was something going on that I was ignoring, that I was trying to push away, that I was denying. And you can't do that for so long, or you can only do that for so long. Eventually, it's going to come up and get you. So this conversation is all about agreements. It's all about your agreements, the agreements that you are making in your life and the agreements that you are keeping in your life. There's a quote, I don't know who said it, but it goes, "Your life works to the degree in which you keep your agreements." Your life works to the degree in which you keep your agreements. So if your life isn't working right now, if it's not working in your relationship, in your marriage, if it's not working with your kids, if it's not working with your job and your career, your friends, your health, then there's probably some agreement that you are not keeping. What do I mean by agreement? I mean, you've made some sort of commitment to something or to someone. And within that commitment, you are expected to show up a certain way, because you've said you would show up a certain way, and you aren't showing up that way. Or maybe you're not showing up at all. And when you don't show up to agreements, your life doesn't work. When you don't show up to your agreements, when you don't keep your commitments, life does not work. That's principle. That happens all across the board. And it comes back to get you. Like, there might be some people who you're like, you know what? This person is always flaking on their agreements, but their life just seems to work. I guarantee you. Either something internally is going on with them, and you don't know what's happening when you separate. Maybe they're going back and hitting the bottle. Maybe they're jumping into drugs. Maybe they're doing something to harm themselves, right? Because you never know what's going on within somebody. Or that shit's going to catch up to them. It always does. Because your life works to the degree to which you keep your agreements. And so, in my life, this week, a person so near and dear to me, we had an agreement to show up, to be there for each other, to enter into a powerful, loving, connected, beautiful, healing space together. And I was not showing up powerfully. And I hadn't been for months. I hadn't been showing up powerfully for months. And she let me know. Very lovingly, but very directly. And that sort of direct feedback, which I wasn't expecting, threw me off guard. And so, when you get thrown off guard with something, a lot of times you want to get defensive. That your ego doesn't want to take a beating. So, initially my defenses go up, but I've worked on recognizing when that's happening and humbling myself enough to be able to receive feedback, because I recognize that feedback is catalyst for growth, right? For me, there's no growth without feedback. There's no evolution without feedback. So I received that feedback and I proceeded to think, okay, I haven't been showing up for this agreement for a while. I've been telling myself that I'm showing up. I've been giving myself good enough. Yeah, you're showing up enough. You're here. You're physically here. You may not be emotionally present, or you might be, trying to rush things along, but you're here. Where else have you been doing that? And let me tell you, that sent me down a rabbit hole, and it wasn't pretty. Because what I discovered about myself is that I have been not keeping my agreements all over the place. All over the place. And so my thought process was like this. Okay, I'm not showing up for this person in this way. All right, and it sucks. And I'm seeing sort of the internal conversation about how I am rationalizing and justifying not showing up. Okay, so I've actually gotten real comfortable with not showing up powerfully. So where else have I been doing that? And I'm sitting here, right? I'm driving my car, and it kind of hit me. I'm heading to a lunch meeting, and I look, and I'm like, damn it, I'm going to be late. I'm going to be late to this meeting. I'm always late to meet this dude every time. And then I start thinking, you are late to almost everything. Almost everything I'm late to. And I'm like, shit, that's an agreement. That right there is an agreement. I'm making an agreement to show up at a certain time, and I always cruise in like 5-10 minutes late. And I'm like, fuck, okay. All right, this is starting to feel big. And I pulled my car over, and I just sat there for a minute, and I was like, okay, where else is this going? And I started pulling on that thread. Where else am I not showing up powerfully for my agreements? And I started to think about past clients and commitments I had made and commitments I didn't keep fully. I started thinking about family and commitments I had made, commitments I wasn't keeping fully. And I'm like, man, this is getting big. This is getting a bit overwhelming. When I started to pull that thread, and I saw, you know what? I have this pattern of making agreements and then somehow finding my way out of them, or showing up just enough. Just enough. Technically, I was in the parking lot at 12:30. I said I would meet you at the restaurant at 12:30, but technically I'm at the parking lot, and I was circling for 10 minutes, and that's why I'm 10 minutes late. But technically I was at the parking lot. That's the type of shit that I'm telling myself. Technically, I was here. You and I, we had a date set up, and, I'm here for the date, and I show up, but, I did put a meeting right afterwards, so I have to leave early. And yeah, I know I do that all the time, but, it's just this one time I got to leave early, but technically I am here. That's that shit that I'm doing. And I was just pulling on this thread, like, man, where is this going? And I kept going. And I was noticing that there's a lot of agreements to other people I wasn't keeping. And I thought, what agreements am I not keeping to myself? And one of the first things that popped in my mind was my balance chart. You all have heard me talk about my balance chart. A lot of you are on it. I've put a lot of you on it. And I started to think, you know what, man? You cheat on your balance chart. That's an agreement to self that you break daily. Because I know there's a couple of habits on there. For example, I have some stretching habits, and I'm supposed to take 15 deep breaths within each area of my body that I'm stretching. And I know damn well I'm not doing 15 breaths. I might do 4, I might do 5, but I'm not doing 15. And the habit is 15. That's the agreement that I made. I said I was going to do 15, but I don't. And I still give myself the point. So I started to realize not only am I breaking that agreement by not being completely authentic with that point, but I got so used to it that I got really good at logging that point and not feeling anything about it. Knowing that, like, there was a part of me, it was like 1% of me that knew you didn't do all 15 of your breaths. Or, yeah, I did them really fast. 15 fast breaths, but I logged the point anyway. There's a part of me that knew that I was skating by, that I was giving myself that pass. And that's really when the gravity of my relationship towards agreements hit me. Because I recognize the agreements that I'm breaking to myself, those are the big ones. Of course I'm breaking agreements with other people. Of course I'm breaking agreements with loved ones, with friends, with business acquaintances, with whatever. Of course I am, because I'm not holding agreements to myself, first and foremost. And it really messed with me that I had gotten so damn effective and so good at just breaking that agreement regularly and not thinking anything about it. I was like, gosh, I know I do this and I keep doing it. And so that, my friends, was a very, very humbling 24 hours. It was a very humbling 24 hours. And, it rocked my ego in a lot of ways. And I appreciate it because for a long time I had been hiding out. I've been showing up. And you know what? I'll be honest. Like, I show up powerfully in a lot of areas. Don't get me wrong. I show up powerfully in a lot of areas. But the game that I'm playing, I'm playing for greatness. I'm not playing for decent. I'm playing for greatness. And when you're playing for greatness, like a lot of us are, we're not looking for the huge, huge leaps in shifts in ourselves. We're looking for that 1 degree, 2 degree transformation, that 1 degree, 2 degree shift. And so I know that I keep agreements in a lot of places. I know that I'm a man of integrity. But, and I say but as opposed to but I was routinely breaking agreements, making excuses, rationalizing and justifying, hanging out in denial, and convincing myself that it was okay to break them as long as I showed up enough. And that is not cool. So this whole conversation for me, I'm like, you know what? I am jumping on the mic and I'm going to share this with the Having It All community. Because if you feel that your life is not working in some areas, I want you to check your agreements. I want you to reflect on the agreements that you've made, big or small, that you know you aren't keeping. Or you know you're just doing enough, just enough. Because we're playing to have it all. We're not playing to have a bit, have half. We're playing to have it all. Abundant, loving lives. And when we break agreements, we are not showing up completely lovingly. We aren't. Somewhere in there is inauthenticity. Somewhere in there is some fear lurking around. Somewhere in there is ego. And if you're thinking that your life is just not working in some area, again, you reflect. Use the 6 F's: faith, family, friends, fitness, finance, fun. Which of those areas do you feel like your life isn't flowing the way you want? Toss relationships in there, toss sex life in there, toss whatever, and just reflect. Take a minute. Pause this. Take a minute and think about it. Okay, you know what? If I was to rate my life a 1 to 10 in those areas, you know what? This area is about a 4. This area is about a 2. I want you to then think about the agreements that you've made that you aren't holding. Because I can just almost guarantee, I'm not a betting person, but man, I would place some money that those agreements, the agreements that you're making and breaking are impacting your life in significant ways. And if you're like me and you're totally unaware of them, or you're in denial of them, then you're going to keep wondering, why isn't my life working in this area? Why can I not just get this piece to work? Other pieces seem to work. Maybe that's where you're at. Like, other pieces seem to work, but this one piece, I just can't figure this thing out. If that's you, check your agreements. Now, we have a lot of different agreements that we make. Again, they're big to small. They all matter. They all freaking matter. So like me, I make agreements to show up to certain places at a certain time. And I have gotten in such a habit of not showing up for those agreements on that time. If I say I'm going to be there at 12:30, typically I'm like 12:35, 12:40. And it's just become part of how I operate. And it fascinates me that I've allowed that to go on for so long because I dislike it. I'm constantly having to remind myself, it's okay. Being late's not the end of the world. Just chill out, calm down. Like, that's what I'm doing as I'm speeding down the highway trying to get to where I'm going. That's an agreement that I'm breaking. And when you start doing it again and again and again, it becomes a pattern. And then you keep doing that again and again and again, and it becomes a habit. Sooner or later, you do that habit for long enough, it becomes part of your character. Your character is the average of your habits. Your character ends up being the biggest contributing factor to why your life is what it is, to why your life looks like and feels like what it looks like and feels like. It's your character. It's those habits that you've just repped for so long, over and over and over. They become ingrained in who you are. It's not your money. It's not your skills. It's not your environment. I mean, your environment plays a part, but that character piece, that's why your life looks like what it looks like. And so for me, here I am repping showing up 5 minutes late, repping not keeping my agreement again and again and again. And it's the small things. It's the small things, because once I'm comfortable breaking that small agreement, okay, now I'm going to start breaking big agreements, and it just goes up from there. So agreements, big and small, like I said, you want to show up at a certain time and you don't. That's an agreement that you're breaking. A lot of folks, this got me. This is really interesting. This year I ran 2 trust challenges. A lot of people signed up for the trust challenge. They made that commitment. They made an agreement. And then I would receive emails and messages that they didn't complete the trust challenge, meaning they didn't do the habit for themselves every single day. And I reflected on that and I said, okay, maybe I'm not being clear that when you sign up for the trust challenge, you're committing to make that deposit daily. This isn't a couple times a week challenge. This is like, I'm trying to trust myself and show up all the time. And that was a very interesting thing for me, because that right there is an agreement. And it's easy, to break that agreement and say, circumstance came up, life came up, stuff happened, I forgot, I went on vacation, I got sick. And that's what we do. That's what we do in our lives. We break agreements when circumstances hit us. My kids got sick. Work got tough. Money got tight. It's the holiday season. And we use, that's our ego. That's our brain. Our brain is so amazing at being able to rationalize. Oh, that makes total logical sense. Of course I would break this agreement because XYZ is happening. So if you were in the trust challenge and you signed up and you broke your agreement, investigate that. Like, look into that. That was an agreement. And if you get comfortable with that, like if the excuse rolled off your tongue so easily as to why you didn't complete it, that's something to look at, people. That's something to reflect on, because that's how you're showing up in other areas of your life. It's getting in there and it's becoming part of your character. It's becoming part of your beingness, part of who you are. And so if you're like me, hopefully you don't have to get smacked in the face by life in order to see that stuff. Sometimes you do. But I want you to be able to learn from me getting that punch, because it sucked. I'll tell you, it sucked. Like, it threw me for a full day, 24 hours. I was like, shit, man. And I had some friends being like, hey, listen, like, be careful not to beat yourself up. It's feedback and, you get some realizations, but like, you got to remember, you are showing up powerfully. You are a badass dude, and I appreciate those people, because it's so easy to get down on yourself. So let's try to separate the emotion from it and just simply look at what it is. Like, wow, I'm not keeping those agreements. So agreements range, like I've been saying, big to small. You know what a big agreement is that a lot of people aren't showing up for? Their marriage. Marriage is an agreement. If you're not keeping that agreement, maybe you're cheating, maybe you're physically cheating, or maybe you're emotionally cheating. Maybe there's just like no intimacy. That's something that you agree to up front. I'm not saying that that's what, when you become married, you agree to that, but maybe in your agreement, that's what you agree to. But you got like a cold bedroom, totally loveless marriage, but you're staying in it. You're breaking the agreement routinely, again and again and again. Guess what? That right there is degrading the integrity of your life. It's becoming part of your character, constantly breaking that agreement. And so what do? There's a couple things you can do if you recognize, after me talking for all this time, that, man, I have been breaking my agreements and it makes sense as to why my life isn't working in these areas, because I'm just really great. I'm a freaking Jedi at breaking agreements and using my mind to rationalize it for it to be okay. All right, cool. If that's where you're at, awesome. Cool. You know what it is now. That's magic right there. Like, you know what it is. Man, okay, I see it for what it is. Now, what do? There's a couple things you can do. First of all, you can do nothing. You can just keep doing what you're doing, and that's fine too. If that's what you want to do, straight, that's cool. Don't be surprised if things don't work, right? Like, there's no more crying if things in your life aren't working. If you're willing to break agreements routinely, if you're willing for that to be part of your character, then don't be shocked when things don't work, all right? But you still have the choice to break those agreements. That's totally cool. You absolutely have choice. Another thing that you can do is you can say, okay, I'm going to stop breaking agreements. I'm going to maybe start small. If you're like me and you struggle with being places on time, I'm going to start being places on time. All right, I'm going to be places on time. That's an agreement that I've made to the other person or the other people. I'm going to start showing up. And start showing up. So that's option 2. Option 1, keep doing what you're doing. Option 2, show up. Keep your agreements. Option 3, make new agreements. You can always make new agreements. And sometimes that is the best thing to do. If you know that something that you've committed to, something that you've agreed to, you are routinely breaking, you are routinely showing up less than powerful for. If you know that's you and you know that showing up powerfully is just out of your reach right now, then make a new agreement. Sit down with yourself, sit down with that person, sit down with that group of people, and make a new agreement. Say, hey, listen, I know that I said I was going to be able to show up each week for this event. But listen, with things going on right now, I'm just unable to do that. It's a real challenge for me. So I want to make a new agreement. How about I show up monthly or every other week? Or how about I show up for a shorter period of time? That's an agreement that I feel like I can keep. Great. Maybe that person says yes. Maybe they say no. But make a new agreement, because it does not serve you to keep that same agreement and continue to not show up for it. It doesn't serve you. It dishonors that other person. Nobody wins in that situation. So for me, I'm doing the second 2 things. I'm looking at where am I going to need to show up. Like this morning, showing up for that run. All right, cool. I'm showing up for the run. Done. I'm going to be there. If I'm in town, I'm at that run. That's my agreement. You all can hold me to it. Right? So you can show up for those agreements. That's one thing you can do. And I'm also going to start looking at what agreements I might want to shift. Maybe I have agreements with some colleagues or something. Like, one of the things that's been really tough for me, I need to do a whole episode on this, is saying no. Saying no to people, saying no to requests, saying no to all sorts of stuff. Because I'm just like you. I got a lot of people who are asking things of me. And I'm like you as well in that it's easy for me to say yes. And so that's a big part of that those changing of agreements. Saying no to things. And that's what I'm committing myself to. I'm committing myself to stepping up powerfully in those areas where I know that I can step up and I know it benefits me and everybody else for me to step up. And I'm committed to looking at those other areas and changing my agreements. So one of the things I'm going to be doing this weekend is revamping my balance chart. No more skating by. No more lying to myself. No more showing up less than powerfully to all of you. It's just fascinating how that got in there and like, don't even recognize it. Like don't even recognize that stuff until it's right in my face. But that's an agreement I'm going to redo. I'm going to redo that agreement. Right now, I'm agreeing to play for, 500 something points. I'm going to agree to play for less points. And I'm going to keep that agreement. And it's going to serve me. And it's okay that I'm going down. Because I personally prefer to show up more powerfully playing for less points than to show up less powerfully playing for more points. And you can think about that for the rest through the other things in your life. Show up more powerfully with less commitments than to barely be there for more commitments. I'm giving you permission to break agreements and change agreements. Excuse me, not break them. Not break them. I'm giving you permission to change agreements. And I'm also lighting a fire under your ass to hold some agreements as well. Because there's certain agreements that you've made that it's not going to serve you to change it. You need to keep it. And you know you need to keep it. And you know which ones I'm talking about. You know right now the agreements that you're ducking out on or you're showing up half-assed to, that it's time for you to step up. It's time for you to be a woman. Time for you to be a man. Step up. Step up. Do it. I'm going to join you because I'm playing to have it all. I'm not playing to have a little. I'm not playing to have half. I'm playing to have it all. And that means keeping my agreements. It means keeping my agreements to self, first and foremost. That's where you start. So if you're wondering, where do I start with this? Start with self. Where do you continue to break agreements to yourself? Start there. Because the more you keep those agreements to yourself, now you're going to start keeping them to others. Now you're practiced. Now you recognize what it looks like and feels like to keep agreements. This stuff, all this stuff on this podcast, this episode, this entire show is inside out. You got to do the reps internally for them to be able to translate externally. If you're not showing up powerfully for your kids, okay, stop making those agreements. Maybe make some new agreements with your kids and then go internal and start showing up for yourself. Then, once you've gotten some maturity with showing up for yourself, go and make those agreements with your kids and show up for those kids. But don't start saying, yes, kids, I'm going to start showing up for you when you haven't made any shifts internally. Because guess what? You're going to fail at that eventually. It's not personal. It's just principle. All this stuff is inside out. So if your life isn't working, I want you to check your agreements. I want you to figure out where in your life you are not showing up powerfully to your agreements. Then I want you to either keep doing what you're doing and don't complain about it and don't be surprised at what happens. Or I prefer you step up to your agreements, or shift those agreements. And I want you to make sure that you're doing this inside out, internally first, and then with the agreements with other people, with other institutions, with other organizations. Inside out. Do those things, I guarantee you will start seeing shifts in your life. Do it long enough, I guarantee you will see transformation. You will experience transformation. You will be a different person if you do this in 12 months down the road. If you say, no more ducking out of my agreements, I'm going to start showing up for my agreements. If you start doing that, you will be a different person in 12 months. Hands down. Guaranteed. Your life will shift. And I want anybody who's skeptical to prove me wrong. Do it and prove me wrong. I want to be a case study in this. So I'm going to be holding my agreements. I'm going to be revisiting my agreements. I'm going to be making sure that I show up for myself first, show up for myself powerfully, show up for myself completely, so that I can then show up for those people who I love the most in my life. I want to show up for them powerfully and completely as well. All right. This is a great episode. This is a great conversation because I know it touches every single person. Every single person. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what your background is. Doesn't matter what your circumstances are. You can apply this. That's why I love this stuff. That's how I know I've gotten a great conversation out there. When I got to take a deep breath at the end of it because I've just been chugging along. All right, everybody. I send you love. I send you light. I'm just sending you encouragement. You can do this. You can show up powerfully. Now is your time. It is. Now is the time. So I'm sending you all of that stuff, blasting through the airwaves, blasting it through your I was going to say earballs, through your earbuds, through your eardrums. That's what it is. Boy, I need to go back to anatomy class. Right through your eardrums. And yes, keep being awesome. Keep doing your thing. My name is Matthew Bivens, and here's to you having it all. Quick note about the Having It All podcast. I am not a doctor nor a licensed therapist. I'm a guy with a story and a passion for conscious conversation. My thoughts, opinions, and beliefs are my own. So please consult with your doctor or healthcare provider regarding any questions or issues you have related to your personal, physical, or mental health.